Welcome to the premiere episode of Franchise Review. In this episode, we'll be looking at the complete history of Winnie the Pooh. From his simple origins as a child's plaything, to a literary icon, to a movie star, Pooh has gone through many changes and appealed to many different audiences. This episode will look at the many people who have made their own interpretations of this timeless character in order to keep him relevant over the past century. Alan Alexander Milne was born in Kilburn, London, in January of 1882. Milne was surrounded by a strong literary influence from an early age. His father, John Vine Milne, was the schoolmaster of a preparatory school. H.G. Wells, the author of many seminal science fiction works, was one of his teachers, and J.M. Barrie, the author of many famous children's books including Peter Pan, was his cricket coach. After graduating from Cambridge University in 1903, Milne would begin to contribute humorous articles to the popular British satirical magazine, Punch, later joining the staff of Punch full-time. His writing at the magazine would soon make him a household name, and he would expand his body of work to include 18 plays and 3 novels. In August of 1920, Milne and his wife, Dorothy de Selincourt, had their first and only child, Christopher Robin Milne. 4 years later, Milne would produce a book that would skyrocket his already growing popularity to new heights, a collection of children's poetry called When We Were Very Young. However, the success of the book could not be attributed to Milne alone. Ernest Howard Shepard was born in St. John's Wood, London, in 1879. Encouraged to draw from an early age, Shepard would hone his artistic skills at the Heatherley School of Fine Arts, the oldest art school in Britain. Shepard would quickly become a successful illustrator, joining the staff of Punch, where he contributed cartoons and drawings to their articles. It was Milne's editor, E.V. Lucas, who approached Shepard to illustrate Milne's book of poems. However, Milne was not entirely sure about Shepard's work, having called some of Shepard's earlier contributions to Punch perfectly hopeless. However, his early sketches for the poems impressed both Milne and Lucas, convincing them both that he was the man for the job. Lucas had one other major idea for When We Were Very Young. He planned to preview excerpts from the book in Punch, something the magazine had done previously for authors such as Charles Dickens, releasing the first few chapters of a new book over the course of a few issues, raising interest in both the upcoming book and the upcoming issue of the magazine. Among the many poems that were released to Punch, as well as other magazines, was a poem titled Teddy Bear, about a stuffed bear named Edward, concerned that he is far more rotund than anyone he sees walking outside of his window. Teddy bears had recently become popular around the world when, in 1902, US President Theodore Roosevelt pardoned a black bear while on one of his many hunting trips. Christopher Robin Milne featured prominently in many of Milne's poems, so it was only natural that his favorite toy, a stuffed bear purchased from the popular British department store Harrods, would appear in some of the poems as well. Christopher Robin's particular bear was made out of mohair by the popular British teddy bear company J.K. Farnell, with Christopher's bear being Farnell's Alpha model. The drawings of Edward Bear that accompanied the poem went through many iterations before reaching their final form. When Shepard first drew Christopher's real toy bear, it was immediately agreed by both he and Milne that it was far too thin for a bear concerned about his stoutness. So Shepard turned to his son, Graham Shepard, and his stuffed bear, Growler, a Steiff brand bear from Germany. Seen here is possibly the first sketch of Growler, who would be introduced to the world as Edward. By the end of the poem, Edward Bear would learn to be proud of his girth, with the narrator saying,
"A bear, however hard he tries, grows tubby without exercise. Our teddy bear is short and fat, which is not to be wondered at. But do you think it worries him to know that he is far from slim? No, just the other way about. He's proud of being short and stout."
Edward Bear, with a change of name, would soon have much more to be proud of. When published in 1924, When We Were Very Young proved to be an instant hit, with the first print run of 5,000 copies selling out in just one day. With the massive success of this first children's book, E.V. Lucas was in a hurry to release a follow-up to the eager public. He believed that Edward Bear had the potential to be popular if featured more prominently in the sequel. He also knew that Milne told his son stories about the stuffed bear, and believed that these pre-existing stories would assist Milne in releasing the sequel as quickly as possible. He also believed that a book of short stories, as opposed to poems, would be well received. With the money earned from the book's massive success, Milne and his family purchased a farmhouse in Hartfield, England, on the edge of Ashdown Forest, one of the largest public access spaces in southern England. This would serve as not only a place for Milne to write, but as a setting for his stories. Many of the locations in a portion of Ashdown Forest called the 500-acre wood would inspire Milne's fictional location, the 100-acre wood. Shepard would frequently visit between 1925 and 1926, and be shown by Milne the locations where each story was to take place. Shepard went to incredible lengths to capture the natural beauty of the forest to ground the fantastical stories. In order to write full stories, a cast of characters had to be created. While it was decided early on that the bear would be the central character, there was a desire to give him a name that was more unique than Edward. It was decided that the bear in the book would be referred to by the same name Christopher Robin gave his bear, Winnie the Pooh. On August 24, 1914, Lieutenant Harry Colburn was faced with an odd decision. With the outbreak of World War I, Colburn, a veterinarian, was headed from Winnipeg to Valcotier to rendezvous with the Canadian Army Veterinary Corps to head to Europe to assist men on the front lines with their horses. During his train ride to Valcotier, Colburn got off the train in White River, Ontario, to stretch his legs from the long journey. At the station, there was a trapper with a female bear cub who had lost its mother. Knowing that the trapper would probably kill the cub, Colburn went against his better judgment and bought the cub for $20 and took it with him. The bear became a mascot for the CAVC and was named Winnipeg after Colburn's hometown of Winnipeg, Manitoba. The bear was trained and taught tricks, even impressing the colonel with her innate tracking abilities. The bear then joined the CAVC on their trip to England, where he became a mascot for the 2nd Canadian Infantry Brigade headquarters. When Colburn learned that he had to head to France, he left Winnipeg at the London Zoo. It was here that she was seen by Christopher Milne, who would give her name, Winnie, to his teddy bear. The Pooh portion of the name comes from the name of a swan that Christopher Milne liked to feed. As AA Milne would describe it,
"This is a very fine name for a swan, because if you call him and he doesn't come, which is a thing swans are good at, then you can pretend that you were just saying Pooh to show how little you wanted him."
With the bear's characteristics defined by the original poem and his proper name in place, additional characters would have to be created to fill out the stories. Each of the early chapters of the book would introduce a new character. In addition to Pooh, Christopher Robin's other toy animals would have roles in the story. E.H. Shepard would draw each of the stuffed animals as they were in real life, then adapt them into simpler images for the pages of the book. While Pooh had been a gift for Christopher's first birthday, a stuffed donkey would follow that same year for Christmas. The donkey was given the name Eeyore, based on the onomatopoeia representation of the noise that a donkey makes. The stuffed animal's neck was designed a little bit too thin and would quickly lose stuffing, causing the Eeyore's head to noticeably droop to one side. This physical characteristic would play into Eeyore's persona, with Milne giving him a gloomy, pessimistic demeanor. A stuffed pig, appropriately named Piglet, was a gift from a neighbor. The smallest of the animals, at only 4.5 inches tall, Piglet was portrayed as meek and timid. Two additional characters who were not stuffed animals were added to the lineup, Rabbit and Owl, both animals that could easily be found in Ashdown Forest. Since the two animals had real brains, as opposed to stuffing, they were portrayed as the smartest characters of the group. However, both characters would have an excessive hubris that would get them in trouble. Rabbit has an overconfidence in himself that would often cause others to perceive him as bossy. Owl, being the eldest character, sees himself as the wisest, although he often exaggerates his abilities to do basic tasks such as reading and writing, and is seen by others as long-winded and boring. As additional characters were needed to expand the story possibilities, they were adopted from Harrod's toy department. Kanga and Roo would move to the 100-acre wood in Chapter 7 of the book. Roo is the youngest character of the lineup, Kanga is the only female character to appear, and Kanga and Roo represent the only directly related main characters. In addition to the 8 named characters, a tertiary group of figures, collectively referred to as rabbits, friends, and relations, were occasionally mentioned and fill in background roles in the stories. They consist of a group of other rabbits, small rodents, and insects. This very simple cast of characters, along with Christopher Robin, would be the entire population of the first book. Similar to the release of When We Were Very Young's poems, chapters from Winnie the Pooh would be released in various publications before the book's full debut. The first chapter of Winnie the Pooh was published in the London Evening News on Christmas Eve, 1925. That same evening, it was broadcast over the radio, read by stage and film actor Donald Calthrop, making Calthrop the first person to ever give voice to Pooh.
It will be my pleasure to present to you Shakespeare in a manner befitting his great... I say, ladies and gentlemen, I've a very difficult job here because the management...
Shepard had not yet completed illustrations for the book, so the chapter had drawings by J.H. Dowd, another Punch illustrator, though Milne would later be quoted saying he thought the illustrations were not very well done. The second chapter would be published in Eve, the Lady's Pictorial, with illustrations by Alfred E. Bestall. Unlike Dowd's drawing for Chapter 1, Milne was very impressed by Bestall's illustrations. Bestall would go on to illustrate another famous British bear, Rupert. At least 6 of Winnie the Pooh's 10 chapters were printed in various publications before the book's release. Aside from minor inconsistencies, the stories were largely in their finished form, with chapters released closer to the publication date containing Shepard's drawings. Winnie the Pooh was published on October 14, 1926. Anticipating the book to be a bestseller, the initial print run was 32,000 copies in the UK, with an additional 150,000 copies when it was released in the US 7 days later. Milne, who was well established as a humorist and playwright, claimed that the book was not originally intended for children, which was reflected by the publishers, who noticed that many adults who purchased the book claimed that they were buying it for themselves, not their children. Only 1 year after the release of Winnie the Pooh, on October 13, 1927, Milne and Shepard's next collaboration was published. The book was Now We Are Six, a follow-up book of verses to When We Were Very Young. Many of the poems had been completed and printed in various publications while Pooh was being written. Although the book, like the first, does not center around Pooh, Pooh does appear in many of the poems, or, as Milne put it in the introduction,
Pooh wants us to say that he thought it was a different book, and he hopes you won't mind, but he walked through it one day, looking for his friend Piglet, and sat down on some of the pages by mistake.
Indeed, Pooh is mentioned by name in 2 of the verses, and he is seen in various situations throughout the many illustrations. On its release, Now We Are Six was wildly popular, surpassing Milne's previous 2 books. However, despite their growing popularity, Milne decided that his next book, another Pooh outing, would be his last in his line of children's books. There were 2 main reasons for this decision. First, Milne was insisted on not being remembered for only one writing style. He had always moved on from one genre just as soon as he had found success in it. He claimed to have often surprised his publisher with his genre hopping, and hoped he could continue to find success in different types of literature. The second reason was that his main source of inspiration, Christopher Robin, was growing up. Indeed, comparing the drawings of the last 3 books, even illustrated Christopher had grown noticeably more mature and taller than his stuffed counterparts. Milne's run of children's books would end with what many literary critics considered his strongest, The House at Pooh Corner. Pooh Corner would consist of 10 new Pooh stories, including many new elements that would become Winnie the Pooh staples. Notably, a new member was added to the core cast, a tiger named Tigger. Tigger is an energetic, outgoing, and cheerful character who is always bouncing and has an overconfidence that tends to get him in trouble. The House at Pooh Corner would be released in October 1928. While the final chapter made it clear that Milne was fully prepared to leave Pooh behind, the rest of the world was not. Although Milne continued to write about various topics throughout the rest of his life, nothing would surpass the success of his 4 children's books. As for Pooh Bear, he was only beginning a life of fame that would quickly grow beyond anything Milne could have expected.